Hello everyone, I'm Mitchell Ryan Darcy, and I just watched James Gunn's The Suicide Squad, and it is great. I'm not going into any spoilers right now, and I just have to say that it is great. Absolutely. It's kind of the level I was kind of expecting going into The Suicide Squad, the first one that Warner Brothers put out. I still enjoyed watching the first Suicide Squad film. There's kind of a lot of things wrong with it, but that's a whole nother video. This video is about the Suicide Squad. I guess you could say it's the second Suicide Squad movie we've ever gotten, and I think James Gunn just fits right at home, given the amount of source material that he had to play with, and the characters, and their histories, and who's casted as those characters. It almost felt like this was like a millions and millions of dollar, not fanfic per se, but like it felt like a fan of comics made this movie, adapted from a script made by a fan, and it felt like the characters were casted by fans. That's what it felt like watching this film. It's amazing. Every year I have a top 10 best and worst film lists that I do on YouTube, and I firmly believe we have a very good contender for best film of 2021 with this one. I don't want to close the road before we get to even the halfway point of the year. Okay, we're basically at the halfway point of 2021, especially theatrical release wise, and we still have several other films that may dethrone it, but we're just gonna have to wait and see, and hopefully the theaters stay open and studios keep releasing their films. The Suicide Squad movie is great. I think the rated R-ness really helped the film separate itself from other DC properties, and I was thinking hypothetically, if this movie does very good, we might be at the possible start of, I guess, would it be Renaissance would be the word? A renaissance of the director's version or vision of a film. Because in my film history class in Toronto Film School, I was always taught that like the 70s was the director's decade for director's control over a feature film. Because of that, we got Godfather, Apocalypse Now, Star Wars, various other films that are crazy good, and the director totally, or for the most part, had so much control and so much budget to play around with. And then a couple movies kind of killed it in the 80s, and then as a result, the studios they were reining back the control of the directors per se, and as a result, some movies suffered and others didn't. Who knows? I'm starting to think, because with this year, I mean, Zack Snyder's Justice League, having James Gunn, who was fired off of Guardians of the Galaxy, and DC scooped him up right away to make a film before Disney got a chance to hire him back for Guardians of the Galaxy free. And I'm just starting to think, if this movie does really well, and we might actually start to see a lot more movies where directors get, final say of a film per se, or, we don't have as much studio interference per se. The cast did an amazing job. Probably one thing I really loved is the way James Gunn sort of structured the film overall. I can see exactly why he structured it in that way, and the little moments where they do jump back and forwards. It works really well in the terms of the film overall, and I enjoyed it. It's not really transitions, it's more title cards. There's so many things that I would kind of praise the film for, but I can't really praise it further without going into spoilers, and I can't really pick apart the film or say what I dislike about it without spoiling the film per se. So if you've seen the first Suicide Squad movie, yes, the second one works on its own. You don't have to see any of the DC movies prior to understand this movie, though being familiar with comic book movies in general might prepare you for what you're about to see. Only slightly, though. And as a result, James Gunn, The Suicide Squad, definitely gets a recommendation from me, especially in IMAX. But actually, that's one thing I can probably talk about is the IMAX. It was the entire screen. Felt a lot like Avengers Endgame, per se, like, because they filmed the entire Avengers Endgame and Infinity War in IMAX, and so you have no bars and it's just the full screen. What was weird is because of the way the film or majority of the film was framed, I thought it was kind of weird IMAX wise, because I was like, oh, if I go see the normal version of this film of the Suicide Squad in a normal theater that's not IMAX, are the bars gonna be there? Because there was several moments where I felt like, a lot of moments where I'm like, if they put the bars back on for the non-IMAX version of the film, is it gonna cut off people's heads or whatever, so to speak? Like, it's gonna be blocking, like, it felt like maybe the IMAX version of the film, for the IMAX, because I read in the end credits that it was optimized for IMAX exclusively. I just wonder if there is a regular version with bars that for the IMAX, did they just sort of zoom it in? That's what I'm wondering. I'm very curious to see, because I definitely want to see this movie again. I don't know if I would want to drive the distance I did to get to an IMAX theater, but I definitely might check it again at my more closer local theater, which doesn't have IMAX. So it would be curious to see how the bars affect the film, or how drastically different ratio it is, per se. Maybe it'll just be the full thing again, and then IMAX was just better quality slightly. I'm not sure. Spoiler section of my review. There's probably so much I could talk about this film, so I'm obviously gonna be missing several things, because I don't want to play through of the movie and what I thought of each individual joke or whatever. But that opening, this movie worked so much more better because I didn't see any of the trailers, just because I've only seen the teaser trailer where it announced each character and who's the actor playing them. And I think it had a stock or a still photo of them. That's the only trailer of the Suicide Squad I've seen going into this film. So I was pleasantly surprised by a vast majority of this film, and especially the beach scene. And what's brilliant about this beach scene, what's brilliant is it definitely sets the tone for the rest of the movie, and what exactly you're getting into with this movie, with this opening. Oh my god, the beach scene. Granted, the movie doesn't actually specifically start with it. It sort of goes into it. Kind of jumps, I think, back and forth slightly. I can't remember, but it was the main titles definitely play over the beach, or the results of the beach scene. And the great thing about the beach scene at night is that it definitely, because I was wondering going into the film how James Gunn is going to handle sort of either death scenes or scenes where bad things happen to characters or whatever, and it's like how much of the Suicide Squad is going to be left standing by the very end of the film. And I was kind of theorizing, it might be one of those films where it's like everything just goes to shit, and it's like it ends up only one surviving, and watch it be like, the polka dot man, or somebody who you didn't expect to be the last one standing. I was like, there's a good possibility I might go that route. How extreme of a movie James Gunn could have went with the final film, per se, but I'm kind of actually surprised by the end of the film, just how normal it sort of goes back into the structure of team working together. And I do feel that they played it quite safe surprisingly, especially with who ends up surviving by the end of it. I only would have gave them mad respect if they killed off, like Harley Quinn or Idris Elba's Milton character. Feeling like an actual team kind of working together, so to speak. And, they were kind of the characters. I was like, if I had money, those were the ones they probably would have survived. Or they probably will survive this movie, and they did. I felt like in some ways, I guess James Gunn was playing around with it, with maybe death fake outs stuff throughout the film, which it worked really well. I think with the news, James Gunn was just trying to generate hype of, oh yeah, anyone could die, because he wanted, when he went to make the movie, he wanted a guarantee from Warner Bros. Like, I can kill off any character I want in any way, sort of thing. And that's definitely great going into it, especially for a first time. Guardians of the Galaxy is a bunch of characters who get together to save the world, so to speak. And this movie does run into a bit of that similarity. I mean, it's kind of hard not to compare, because it's like you're dealing with characters who would probably not even be seen together, let alone working together. And then having them working together or being forced to work together, sort of thing. And it's a very hard dynamic to escape from, per se. You can definitely see, especially also choice of soundtrack, you can kind of see the comparisons of this movie to Guardians of the Galaxy. In the last couple of years, I did watch the movie Slither for the first time, which is I think that was James Gunn's first major film, or at the very least it was the film that sort of brought him into the spotlight. I definitely see some Slither to this movie. Like, if you didn't tell me who made this movie and I watched this movie, removing the credits that tell you who made the movie, I would have definitely have guessed James Gunn was the one who directed this. He does definitely have a distinct style, or the way he works around, and he's very good at going back and forth, even within a same scene. Funny to serious, to back to funny, back to sad, back to serious. It's back and forth sometimes, and it's surprisingly, James Gunn sort of makes it work effortlessly. Milton's talking to his daughter, and in the prison cell, and it's like, it starts off serious drama, and then it's like it immediately turns into a comedy, and then it goes back to serious again, and it's like, this is all in under a minute. Like, wow. It's James Gunn's style. I would argue that's James Gunn's, like, especially scripting style of how he handles changes in from comedy to seriousness and then back. It surprisingly doesn't give you whiplash or anything. And if I thought police station scene from Birds of Prey was very awesome for Harley Quinn, this movie took it to a whole nother level. Granted, being rated R or 14A in Canada, it does help to have that freedom, because, when you're taking care of guards with a spear, I mean, there's gonna be some blood. Let's be honest here. But yeah, I love the movie, and I actually loved how it's so weird. It's like, I knew going into the movie not to get attached to characters, but like, the longer the characters lived, the more attached I was to them. And I hate how that happened. I don't know if it's human nature or whatever, but like, the longer I watched the movie, the more I was like, oh, please don't die. Please don't die, I love the music by John Murphy in this. I actually had a big smile on my face when the credits said music by John Murphy. I was like, all right. It's a great movie. Had some great shots, great moments, great. Like, if I was a fan of one of these characters in the comics, I'm sure I would have been either loving or hating what James Gunn did with those characters. Though I feel bad if you're any of the fans of characters that were on the first beach opening. There was, like, I didn't really have any problems with this movie. I just felt everything was a right decision with this movie, per se. I kind of, in some ways, want DC just to have their own James Gunn cinematic universe where it's him just playing around with DC characters, and it's like it's its own separate universe. I kind of wish for that, especially after seeing this movie. But then again, a part of me kind of wants Suicide Squad, if it's going to be any sort of franchise. I kind of would wish every time they would just get a new director, new writer, or maybe even the same person have the director do the writing, and just have different directors do their own thing, was their own Suicide Squad standalone movie. And I kind of wish maybe that they'll just keep doing that as well. Like, can you imagine Zack Snyder's Suicide Squad, or Edgar Wright's Suicide Squad, or hell, even if they get like an up and coming film director that I've never heard of and just have them do a Suicide Squad movie, you know? I'm sure a lot of filmmakers would love the opportunity to make their own Suicide Squad movie, you know? Playing around with, I'm sure DC has thousands upon thousands of characters to choose from. So the question for this episode is, what is your most favorite underrated or underappreciated DC character who's maybe not as famous? And would they be a good character to have in a Suicide Squad film? Anyways, thank you very much for watching. I want you to have a nice day or night or whatever time you watch this. Have a nice whenever. So, next time in the future, I will be watching and reviewing Reminisce. The new Hugh Jackman and Rebecca Ferguson film.